Hey everybody, I am here with one of my dearest friends and amazing healers on this planet, my friend Haylee, and we are going to chat about her journey coming back to herself and how she got into the modalities she had. So Haylee, thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
So let's jump right in. Haylee has, well, you guys don't know this. Haylee, you grew up in Vermont and then you moved to San Diego.
hmm
How did this transition from a small town environment to a more metropolitan area impact your personal growth?
Oh, that's a great question to start off with. Oh boy. Well, let's see. It was big. I mean, so much personal growth happened because of this life decision. Growing up in nature, connected to my family, where there was no post office in our town, um, dirt road, super mellow. Closest to the grocery store was 20 minutes to 45 minutes. You'd make a day trip out of going to the grocery store and you'd stock up for the week. um, Backyard nature, where like I said, quiet. To Carlsbad, San Diego, which for a lot of people isn't a big deal. They'd say that this is, not necessarily metropolitan for most people. For me, definitely metropolitan, and where there's houses next to each other, a small backyard. A backyard here is a big deal. Um, and so much energy. I can hear the interstate. I don't have silence. It was a complete shock to my nervous system when I moved across the country. I had no idea what I was getting myself in for. Had never visited San Diego prior to moving. Um, my intention was to move to Northern California, and a friend was moving here at the same time. And she was like, "Well, why don't we move across the country together? And then you can always go to Northern California from there." So I decided yes, and moved in with a friend who owned a house. It worked out really well. It's kind of a shoe in to Southern California. The first 3 months that I got here, I just basically remember laying on my friend's back porch, or the house that that I moved into. I laid on the back porch day after day after day with so much uncertainty and so much confusion of this life decision. And I was unmotivated to do anything. It was such a shock. And so then, after time went by with a lot of questioning about what I was doing, and with the attempt to move up to Northern California or back to Vermont, everything, it seemed like the universe took all of that away piece by piece. Every time I tried to make a change, the plans would completely stop working. And so I was basically, I don't know, not necessarily forced, but it kind of felt like I was forced to stay in San Diego. And there was some level of like comfortability here. There was some sense of something that on some level felt right, but I focused on what felt wrong and avoided it to the nth degree for so many years. And so it contributed to so much growth, on almost every single level, I would say. And my identity as a Vermonter, my connection to my family and my friends, my need to see them. I couldn't see them whenever I wanted to, right? And uh, I had to accept what life provided for me and look at the positives rather than focusing on what I wanted and desired, which was really challenging. I had such a strong pull to Northern California and this attachment to being in Northern California, that being here really provided that insight as to this attachment to wants versus, again, releasing and allowing spirit or the universe or higher guidance to trust that and to just surrender completely to what was provided for me. And with that, there was just so much more suffering until I finally got to a place where I just fully surrendered. And yeah, that was the biggest growth, I would say.
Why Northern California? Like, why were you so keen on Northern California?
So I visited Northern California in college. And at that time, I was like the weirdo in Vermont. I was like drinking green smoothies, like using tinctures, like herbalism and like all these things that were in Vermont, yes. But in my circle, I stood out and would get commented on, like, you know. And then I visited Northern California, and I remember going to a regular, I don't even know if it was like a Rite Aid type of thing or wherever it was. It seemed like a regular store, and it had a tincture refill station. And I was like, oh my, this is like, this is in another place, you know, like this is here. I belong here. And then like I went to a little cafe and I remember seeing like wheatgrass shots and like green. It just was all the things I was getting into. It seemed like it had been established there for so much longer. And so I felt in deep resonance with their philosophy and their lifestyle. And it also was similar enough where there's like nature and big trees, and the ocean was really amazing to have the balance between the two. So it was like similarities, differences. It just kind of felt like, um, and like everybody would ask you when you got there what your like astrology chart was. And at that point, I was like, nobody cares about whether I'm an Aries or not, or like what my moon and rising are in Vermont. Like I loved it. You know, I was like, this is the fucking best conversation. Excuse my language. But I felt very in resonance. And so wanted to move up there for like a year and just experience something different than Vermont for a little while.
And you didn't find that when you were in San Diego initially?
No, I mean, I didn't find it in the circle I was in when I moved to San Diego. I was surrounded by professional snowboarders and kind of their group of friends, which was awesome. I loved spending time with them, but it wasn't as weird as I am. And then I remember going to, you know, some places here. I worked at a cafe that was organic in Encinitas. It was Healthy Creations, and that resonated. It was all like, you know, good quality food and similar values. But a lot of Southern California to me felt trendy versus like deeply rooted in a philosophy. Um, and so that was really hard to grasp and to sink into and to want to be a part of. I avoid trends as much as possible. And so being in a place where it felt like that, yeah, I didn't feel like I found it at the level I was looking for.
That makes sense. And it's so funny that you call yourself a weirdo, because from the day I met Haylee at a brain injury retreat, she was our chef, our nutritionist. I would never say that weirdo ever was what any of us thought of you.
Oh, that's good. Because I definitely thought it was different.
So I know you have a degree in nutrition and food science. So what led you from that to becoming a medical intuitive, a ceremonialist, an herbalist, shamanism? Like, can you share the turning points or epiphanies that led you to explore these unconventional paths?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can start with my path a little bit. When I was 19 or 20, I started having issues with food, the food that I was eating, and just noticed that my body felt extremely fatigued and kind of like I was walking in a bubble a lot of the time. I felt like my mind and body were disconnected from one another. And I knew I mean, that wasn't my state of being. And so when that started happening, I was wondering what was going on. And some of my friends, let me back up a little bit. My freshman year of college, I went to a school in New York, and I was studying, what was it? Psychology. And so when I was in that degree, my other friends were studying nutrition, and they were talking about the ways in which the body responds to certain things and kind of how the body works. And I became really fascinated with those conversations in the beginning. And I took some class there that had to do with the body, and the teacher was amazing. So I really started getting more into the curiosity about nutrition and how the body works, and food, and how how food supports the body. Um, and so then and actually, really, as I'm speaking, I've kind of always had a sense of curiosity around nutrition and food, and cooking has always been my favorite thing. So there's been a connection from the beginning with that relationship. So then I started having issues with my body, and I went to a ton of different doctors. They didn't know how to support me. They said I was fine. All the tests were normal. Everything came out fine. And I just told them, per request of my friends who were nutrition, they were saying, well, there's something new that's coming out that people are becoming aware of that could cause issues in our bodies, which is wheat. They didn't say gluten at that time, it was just wheat. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. All of my meals have wheat in it. So I was like, okay, I'll try removing that to see how I feel. And I felt better. It was an instant change. And so I then really understood the body food connection. And so then I wanted to understand more deeply about the body and about food and take nutrition and food science. And I also didn't know a lot about alternative stuff at that point. I went to the University of Vermont, and that felt like the most cohesive path at that time. And while I was in that, I started studying herbalism. My friend Rosemary sent me one of her books where that helped guide me because she knew I was struggling with all of these types of things. So she sent me a book that got me into herbalism. And then I took an energy medicine class, which had to do with like reading the chakras with the pendulum. And I found that fascinating. And then I took a Chinese medicine class about the energetics of food, which I found extremely fascinating. And so I started taking alternative stuff in at while I was going to UVM, and those alternatives felt more in resonance with me to shift into deeply understanding, because those changed my body the most and felt most supportive for my personal path. And the Western nutrition philosophy, although there's some benefit to it for so many people, for me, I didn't resonate with a lot of what they were saying. And a lot of the classes that I was taking, or one specific class I was taking, I really felt a lot of discord with. And so I feel like I probably took that and like labeled it as Western belief system and was like, that's not for me. So although I'm grateful that I know it, and I'm grateful that I can talk to people who are in the Western path, and connect with them in that space as well, it felt like the alternative path was the most beneficial for my personal journey and healing.
So did you know then that you had gifts?
Oh, did I know then that I had gifts? Well, you're so funny. You put me in these places of saying I had gifts.
Well, you do have gifts. I mean, would you admit that you have gifts? Haylee has a. Do you admit that you have gifts?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like everybody has gifts. I feel like I'm able to maybe get out of my way more because of my desire to help and heal people. And I think with that desire to help and heal, my heart opens. And in that space, I can provide deeper assistance than people who maybe don't have as much of a desire to do that. And so when I would say when I was reading the chakras and could see that or when I was in the class with all the people, when I was taking that class, um, things came easy to me for sure. And that was a determining factor of following this alternative path as well.
Did you ever think at that time, like, did you ever question, like, why did these things come easy to me and not everybody else?
Did I ever question that? No, I think I just felt inspired by it, that it came easy and wanted to keep going with it, and felt like wanting to deepen in it.
Because I know you won't say you have gifts. I will say, I mean, I have been a personal, I've had personal experiences with Haylee. I've known her for a long time. And actually, when I was visiting you one time, like she would literally just make something and put it on the table and say, here, take this. And I would take it. And I remember at the time, Taylor said to me, you just take anything she gives you. And I said, yes, I do. Because I trust her that much. Like the energetic soda, you do have gifts. I'm going to put it out there. She may not claim them, but she clearly does. Because, like, for instance, right, I know medical intuitive is one of your gifts. It's not something I can do. Can you explain to people, like, what that even is?
Well, first of all, you could do it.
You're right. I could if I tuned in, but it's not. Yes. Yeah.
1000%. Yeah. And medical intuition is also something I was trained in. That isn't something that, although I could see things prior to medical intuition, yes, I was trained, and my teacher is very good at teaching people how to be a medical intuitive. So even if you feel like it's not a gift and you feel like you can't do it, you absolutely can. And with the right teacher, you can develop that muscle and those skills. Medical intuition is a tool where we can see inside somebody's physical form and look at all body systems to understand what's happening with the disease in the system, or whatever the person's coming to, what they need support with. And from there, like I could go into, I look at somebody's cell and I can see what nutrients are required for optimal like cellular support. And then I can also look at like, the digestive system, for instance, and I can see that there might be, something in the digestive system that would need to be healed. And then we look at how that connects to other parts of the body and their relationship and how to shift them physically. And so I receive guidance to help support the individual with their specific needs with their healing, versus, if it's like an overall philosophical system where you're like, well, according to this methodology, this is what you should do for this. And there's so many things out there that are different, like whether that's veganism or eating a lot of meat or, whatever, so this is like, it cuts through all of that confusion. And it's like these specific foods would be supportive for this part of your body that's trying to heal itself. And from there, we look at the emotional component, because more often than not, there's another aspect that needs support for the physical body to heal. And a lot of it stems from a belief that is from childhood. And that belief, I can see, I receive who it comes from and what their intention was with it, and the life lesson that the person needs to understand from that, and their karmic decision that they made from that moment in time. And then from there, getting more insight with healing the emotional component or the spiritual component, the mental component, whatever the energetics body requires to bring that state into balance. And so you look at both of those aspects and help the person with their, like I said, with their personal healing path and guidance.
So when you say I receive, who are you receiving from? Where are you receiving from?
Yeah, so with that training, we only connect to our higher selves. So I do my higher self, and my higher self talks to your higher self. So your higher self is telling mine what to say and do. Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, super cool. I love it.
I love that you love it. Your work is very potent. Have you had like what is the most unusual thing that you've seen happen in doing that?
In terms of what I've received, in what way?
And like maybe a client, or maybe something that just even took you aback, that was like, wow, I knew that, and be able to shift something with yourself or with somebody.
Well, I mean, there's so many randoms. Like after every session, I'm always like, oh my God, that shit is crazy. I'm always blown away by it. I think it's like the coolest. It's so crazy cool, unexplainable. And just really quickly, like I've always been obsessed with magic. And to me, this is magic. And so I get so excited after each session to be like, holy shit, I saw you as a 4-year-old, and I described the exact moment in detail about this memory that you remember, and you describe it in the exact detail. That's crazy. It's wild to be able to, it's so cool. I was like, I'm always in awe. I would say one of the craziest, like most random things. So sometimes, and I'm sure people like, I'd be curious to talk to more intuitives about what they receive, but oftentimes in my sessions, I will see random things. Like I don't even know where it comes from. And it feels like it's out of left field and it's completely unrelated with the session at hand. And I've been learning more and more just to say that, even if it's even completely out of context, and in like mid sentence, if I'm going down one path and something comes in, I'll stop and say that now versus pushing it aside. And that seems to be the craziest stuff. Like this one random client, it was her first session, and I was talking and I was like, I see an alien here. And just wanted to say that we're on a medical intuitive reading, but like, just wanted to point that out. And she was like, holy, she's like, oh my God, that is the one thing that you could have said to make me trust you, to know that you're a real intuitive, because the only people that know, I mean, it was specifically ET, it wasn't just an alien, it was very specific. And so she was like, with that, like nobody knows that except for my close family. Like that has been my thing since childhood. And so because I said that random thing, she's been a client for years now because she fully, and so that was like a very out of left field random thing. And if I hadn't said that, who knows if she would have felt as in resonance with, who knows? I don't know. But it definitely was a determining factor of, okay, you're receiving stuff that from where you're receiving it, and it's not fake. That was pretty cool. So random.
It's cool. Have you ever struggled with that yourself, thinking like, is this fake? Like, am I really doing this?
With my readings, every time.
Even yeah, how many? Yeah, yeah, but like you've been doing it for a while now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But I think,
But you still.
you know, oh yeah. I mean, I trust in it more. And what helps me is like saying disclaimers, like, bear with me. I'm going to be saying whatever I see, and maybe it resonates and maybe it doesn't, but I'm just going to say it. And oftentimes with that, it takes off this like fear of being wrong or fear of not like questioning what I'm seeing. And we can just go with the flow of it all, because it's vulnerable to say what you see, especially when it's random stuff that you don't know about, but the person does. It means something to the person, but to you, it's like, what, like, why is ET randomly here? I'm looking at your like body, like all these things that like, it's like, am I making this up? Because you can simultaneously so my eyes are closed. And so right. So that's how I envision stuff. And you can imagine anything at any moment. And so with it being kind of the same space of seeing what I can imagine, I could also put anything in there from my mind to imagine it at the same time. It can easily interject. So it's a big training and like in fully getting my mind out of the way, and trusting that process within myself too.
Does it feel differently?
Now I'm able to know when it's my mind and when it's intuition. When I was first starting, it was really challenging to know the difference. But that I would say is the biggest difference now after doing it for so long.
How were you able to eventually figure that out?
The difference for me is the intuitive component is more subtle. It's almost a lot of it's been just trial and error of saying what I see, feedback from the client, and also navigating my everyday intuition and knowing the difference with that, because it's so similar, right? Like and I think a lot of people who are on the intuitive path, it's like, what's my thought and what's an intuitive hit? And intuitive hit, I think, feels like it's just subtle, versus the thought sometimes can be louder. I don't know. It's hard. I think that's one of the most challenging things to describe, but you just learn for yourself what that is. Yeah. I think you learn for yourself the difference in your mind.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Well, and it also depends how you're getting it. Like for me, it's just a knowing. Do you know what I mean? Like I know what I know.
Right.
Like if I'm talking to somebody, and sometimes to your point, stuff will come out. Like I'll say stuff. Like it happened the other day. I said something to somebody, and I'm like, I don't know why I'm saying this, but I just feel like I'm being told to tell you this. It made no sense to me, but to them, it was like, they were like, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. And I was like, okay, would you, you know what I mean? Like, why? You know what I mean? I don't know what this means.
Totally.
And then they share, well, because this meant this, and how would you even know that? And I'm like, well, I didn't. So to your point, yeah, it is. For me, it is subtle, where I get what you're saying, where your own brain is loud. It's like an aggressive, like, chatter.
Yeah, it's different. And the crazy part too is like sometimes I'll talk to my client prior and we'll be talking about what they want to go into, which now is turned from medical intuition, intuitive readings to kind of overall intuitive readings. Like I'll just do like whatever people want to talk about. And so sometimes I'll have like advice from my mind before our session and I'll talk and I'll be sharing what I think and blah blah blah. And as we're getting like as my clients and I deepen, right, it's more of kind of both. And so we have a conversation and then I go into my intuitive space, and that information that comes through there is so different than when I'm just speaking from my mind. And even when we're speaking from our minds, we can still receive intuitive guidance and we still can help with, in that form. However, that has helped, I think, to develop knowing the difference between the two, realizing like, oh my God, there's no way my mind would have thought about this information. And so then that has helped me delineate between the two as well. And even sometimes I'm in intuitive reading, I try to pull from my mind to tell them something that I'm trying to remember, and I can't do it. It's there are times where it feels like two separate brains, and I mean, ultimately, right? People say you have the left brain and the right brain, but it just feels like that's helped me notice the difference too.
So that brings me. So you've come from now from medical intuitive to, like you said, just intuitive sessions. You also are what, a chocolatier, however you would like to call that.
Mm-hmm.
So you're an herbalist, ceremonies, medical intuitive, now intuitive readings. Now I know you're diving into shamanism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what has all that, like, what have all of these come to form for you now in like your path and your purpose?
Yeah. Shamanism is providing probably the deepest soul resonance path that I've felt so far. It brings together everything that I've been searching for, where it's the magic of the intuitive, it's the magic of the guides, it's this other alternative world that you work in. And it makes so much sense to me. And then herbalism comes into play for the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual bodies as well. Like you can address all of those with different forms of herbs. And so with the medical intuitive readings, giving guidance with herbalism support, I can help tell people how to help their bodies with that training or that understanding as well, and guide them in that path. I can integrate the food that they would need to support their bodies. And then with shamanism, I can provide really, really deep healings that give me that tool to assist somebody in a space that's beyond a lot of normal healing modalities. It's really potent. And so they kind of all pull in together to allow me to meet people where they're at on their journey. And so it's like the intuitive reading can give me more details that, like I said, my mind wouldn't be able to understand necessarily. It just gives me very pinpointed, okay, your body needs these foods, needs this diet, it needs these specifics. Your emotional body needs these practices. And then from there, I can formulate a protocol based on what I do know and all of my years of, implementing nutrition and herbalism. And then now with shamanism too, it's applied shamanism. And so the training implements applied Buddhist philosophy or ancient Buddhist philosophy, ancient shamanic techniques, and then hypnotic methods. And so a lot of that is to help keep the power within the client. And so we use self inquiry with the client to help understand more deeply what they're coming with. And then I can eventually, the next part of that training, I haven't done yet, but eventually put them into a hypnotic state to more deeply get to that root cause of what we've been kind of pulling from or pulling out through the sessions of applied shamanism, which is, like I said, they're journeying to meet their guide. They're using dream work to understand what the messages are and to understand the answer to their question. So with those components, and like I said, like me just asking questions, I might give some insight if there's like something that feels pertinent or, that might be helpful for them. But mostly it's just getting them to be clear on what is going on within their lives. And then session after session after session of that, we get to the very root of what they came in for. And then from there, we can do whatever the next step is, whether that's me providing a soul retrieval for them, a power retrieval, energy medicine, like just healing, or whether that looks like a psychedelic experience, because that's also part of shamanism. It's using plant medicine, like deep plant medicine, to go in so they can fully access their subconscious and get to that like deeper part that they didn't access with just the self-inquiry, and fully understand that and have their guidance show them how they can fully shift that. Or it would be putting them into a hypnotic state, and I would also ask them questions in that state for them to more clearly and fully understand themselves and how to and clear it essentially and heal it. And depth hypnosis, which is what it's called, is basically my teacher Isa Gucciardi. She's incredible. She says that depth hypnosis is like a psychedelic journey slowed down. So you basically just like really get into all the things that need to be processed and moved through in an hour session. And I've done it multiple times with my friend who is the inspiration for this training. And afterwards, I feel rocked. Like I feel like I am on a completely different world for a while. And I'm like, what just happened? And, and so then I'm like, this is real. This is so real. And, yeah, so that's kind of how I interweave everything together.
So 2 questions. If you could simply tell people who have no idea what shamanism is, what would be a simple way to even explain that?
So shamanism is it is the most ancient, I want to say healing, but it's more than just healing. But in this context, I'll say healing technique, where it's earth-based and the shaman goes into a different state of awareness to access guidance and on how to heal. And in shamanism, the drum beat, generally there's a repetitive sound that shifts their brain state. Oftentimes it's a drum, sometimes it's a rattle. A lot of times they'll dance and they'll move to help get themselves out of their own way before they journey. So then that way they can really sink into this altered state that they create through the consistent beat. And that consistent beat essentially tunes them into the vibration of the earth. And it ultimately puts you into a theta brain state, which I'm starting to understand. I could be completely wrong in this, but because I just listened to this podcast that talked about this, and they were saying something along the lines of the theta brain state, I think, is the vibration of the earth. And then I think the alpha is the vibration of the universe. Oh, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. But with shamanism, getting you into that theta state, getting you into the resonance of the earth, that allows them to shift into a different world. There's an upper world and a lower world. And in those worlds, they have guides, and those guides give them guidance with how to heal, with what to do, how to provide what they're looking for. And that you can also do healings in those places for the person. Yeah, I would say that's essentially my understanding of shamanism.
That's pretty good.
I don't know. I mean,
That's better than I could have than I could have explained it. I was like, that was a tough question. I know, because I'm like, I don't know how I would explain that. What drew you to that? I mean, you already have so much insight and knowledge. What made you go now to this?
I've been interested in shamanism for a very long time. I remember first feeling a draw to it 12 years ago ish, because I wanted to understand how to heal on the deepest level. And to me, shamanism just was that. And I don't know why, and I don't know how, because I didn't really know much about shamanism, but something in me said that that was the method for what I was looking for. And then I was at Burning Man actually. And I was like talking to somebody about that. I was like, I just want to learn. I just want to understand how to heal on the deepest level. And I feel like it's shamanism. And this woman was like, oh, there's a shaman here. And I was like, what? No, I need to meet this guy, you know? And so I went up and I talked to him and he was like, why do you want to learn shamanism? Just like completely challenging me. And I was like, I just, same thing. I feel like it's the deepest form of healing. And he was like, well, you could just pick up a couple of books and learn it that way. And I was like, really? It doesn't feel in resonance. Like, I feel like I would need to study with shamans around the world or go deeply. And, like my vision was like, go down to South America or go to a different country where they have like shamans that are fully still functioning, right? And like in it, um, and be there for like 10 years. And so that confused me. And however, I bought some books and I bought Sandra Ingerman's books and I went on to like her online stuff and I just got really into her teaching. She resonated with me the most. And then I put it on the back burner for something felt, I don't know what it was, but there was something where it was like, I don't know. Whatever it was. So then I put it on the back burner for about a decade, but it's always been in my mind of wanting to learn and like really having the desire to go to a different country and learn from somebody, but that hasn't fallen into place. And fortunately, this training has, and I really am so grateful for it.
Does that make sense? So I know you mentioned psychedelics,
Yeah,
and everybody's probably like, "What?"
I know.
But I know it. Then that's why I want to bring it up and talk about it because there's always this idea that psychedelics are just so bad, or you know what I mean? It's 1960s and hippies, and you know what I mean? Like people are tripping, and but that's not really what you're talking about here. And I want to kind of clear that up so people understand. When you're talking about the use of psychedelics, what are you talking about, and how are they used?
Yeah, thanks for clearing that up. So in this context, it would be with psilocybin mushrooms in particular, rather than like there's like ketamine therapy, there's MDMA therapy, there's ayahuasca, there's a ton of different forms that are currently being used in settings that are either in a more of like a medical setting or in a more ceremonial setting. And so a psychedelic, which is also termed as an entheogen, which is the God, I think it's the God within. Sorry, I'm not doing the best at remembering specifics, but I should know that. But it essentially helps to clear up your blockages that you have in your mind where you are preventing inner knowing from coming through. And so on a daily basis, we have something called the default mode network, where that formulates our reality and our understanding of reality. And with that running, we have our paths that are constantly going, constantly forming, firing, and we just have our way of being and our understanding of the world and ourselves. And with that, it can be challenging to override that and to make inherent change. We get in our own way. So, psychedelics, or at least psilocybin, helps to quiet the default mode network and bring forth a deeper understanding about the reality that you're creating for yourself. And it can show you what's in the way. It can show you how to love more, how to, whatever you need to understand within yourself, to come into more of a state of oneness and more of a state of wholeness. And so it's a really potent form of self growth and expansion. And so with the context that I would be using it in, it's more of, we've gotten to a place where you understand yourself very deeply. However, there's a block here that we can't access further. And we need either a plant medicine or a hypnotic state to fully get you out of your way. And I look at plants as teachers, and this teacher can help teach you what you need to learn about yourself and what you need to really see. And sometimes it can be harsh. Sometimes, it's a slap in the face and it feels like a quote unquote bad trip, but it's because you needed to really look at yourself and see things that were in the way. And you had to almost go through these deep challenges to overcome it on the other side. And the cool part is there's happy chemicals that are produced from psilocybin, right? Serotonin is produced in the brain. So fortunately, even if the trip is challenging, you're going to feel better after. And if you look at the challenging trip as a hard teacher that you've had, somebody who was the best teacher in your life, but the hardest, right?
Yeah.
That would be that moment. It's not always going to be bliss. It's not always going to be incredible, but oftentimes you learn the most from the challenging ones. And so, and in a therapeutic setting where you're working with a counselor, you're working with somebody who can assist you throughout that process, then it makes it less scary. You know that you're held, you know that you're safe. Sometimes you might feel like you're dying, but you're not. It's your ego death. And it's just a really challenging part to get you to understand what you need to understand and to have somebody there to reaffirm that that's not what's happening and it'll be over in 4 to 6 hours. Like, it really isn't a ton of time, but a lot happens in that time. And then after that, there's the integration, because yes, you could continuously do these journeys and experiences, but that's not going to change you. You have to make the changes yourself. And so then you integrate and implement what you need to do to continue the teachings that you had just received, to continue keeping yourself in balance and keeping you connected to the highest version of yourself ultimately.
So it's the ultimate mirror.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I think it's pretty cool, but so my question to you is, I know I have a couple friends who are hypnotherapists, right? Do hypnosis, and I've asked them, and I'm going to ask you, because I don't know if it's different from a deep hypnosis than that. Can everybody be hypnotized? Because I know when I asked them, they said no. So I didn't know if your experience is different.
I haven't gotten to that part of the training yet, so I'm not aware of that component.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see what you find out, because I found that fascinating. You know what I mean? When I asked, because I was like, can everybody? And they said people without imagination can't be hypnotized. And I was like, huh, yeah, that's interesting. So I just didn't know.
I wonder if you could. Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, no, I'm not sure yet. I would be curious to ask my teacher that when I'm in that part of it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see that, because to me it sounds a little bit different than your typical hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I've been hypnotized. I've done it for treatments. It's great, but that sounds way deeper than anything I've done.
Okay. Yeah, I'm honestly not familiar with hypnosis at all. Just based on what I've experienced with my friend who has done this training, and the effect it has on me is all I know. But yeah, it was extremely transformative for me. But I don't think that people can get to it. Yeah. Yeah. It is definitely depending on each person.
Yeah, it depends how deep you can go. I mean, I felt very rested after my hypnosis,
Sure.
and it did help me work through some things. But I mean, I know they say, what, 30 minutes of hypnosis is like you slept for 4 hours, something like that. So I felt very rested. I wouldn't say I had deep epiphanies.
Yeah.
So I was just curious. It'll be interesting to see what you come out with.
Yeah. I mean, I could always practice clients. So.
Hey, I've been one of Haylee's many practice clients. your energy medicine is potent. It affects me. Somebody asked me that. I'm like, her stuff affects me in a deep way. I don't care if it's been one of your herbal products. I don't care. I remember, and I don't know if you even remember, when we did the meditation back to back, sitting back to back in Maine.
Yeah.
And we were at a brain, and I could feel the tingling in my brain, but I didn't know what was going on. And I was like, what is going on? And I'm thinking, is Haylee feeling this? Like, what is happening? And it was right where I hit my head. And then afterwards, we got up, and I asked Haylee, did you feel that? And you looked at me and you go, feel what? I was like, my brain was tingling. And you're like, oh yeah, I was doing some energy work on you. I was like, what? I mean, it was amazing. It was, and I.
Yeah, I mean, looking at that now, I'm like, oh, I never asked you permission to do that. However, I felt like I had your permission, and like that would be supportive for you.
Yes. Yeah, you have helped. You have helped me in ways more than anybody else in my own healing journey. So I can definitely say you are very, very gifted, my friend.
I just love it. I love it.
Well, that's why. All right, so I'm going to hit you with this final question, then we'll wrap up here in a little bit. So your work is deeply rooted in connecting people to themselves, the earth, community, and spirit. Can you elaborate on how this profound connection has personally impacted your sense of purpose and fulfillment?
My connection to these things in particular, or my connection to my path with it?
Either. Yeah, either or.
I mean, I guess it's all the same, really, because I feel like my life is my work and
Right.
how it's impacted me.
Yeah, your purpose and fulfillment.
Oh my God, I nothing feels more fulfilling than what I'm doing. It's everything, and seeing the impact that I have on clients and that this work provides is it's wordless. I don't even know. I don't even know. It's all I want to do, and it's all I care to do, and it's I will take it to whatever level and degree that I need to take it to continue providing this and doing this for everybody. It connects me to the highest version of myself and holds me accountable to continuously walk my walk and to show up and to implement the teachings within myself so I can be the best version of myself for everyone else. And I'm really grateful for that. I think sometimes it can be easy to put yourself aside, but when you show up for others and putting yourself first to show up for others, when that makes more sense, everybody wins. I'm grateful for my personal path because of this purpose in this life. Yeah, to me, life prior to this deep integration of my purpose that I feel right now, this embodiment of the purpose, I didn't feel like life was worth living. And now that I've found it, it's worth every moment.
Wow. And that would be a big disservice for the rest of us because your light is so needed on this planet.
All of our lights are needed.
True.
And I think and that's what I'm wanting to provide for everyone is bringing back the entirety of everyone and having them see that within themselves and inspiring them to find their purpose, or find something that's purposeful that feels like it's worth living, because this world is really challenging, can be really challenging to live in. And without that, I think a lot of us feel lost and confused and without a guiding light. And if you can find that guiding light and if you can feel like the best version of yourself, then again, everyone wins. You help the person at the grocery store when you're buying groceries in your light and you're saying hi versus head down and avoiding contact. Or, like everybody in every interaction is imperative, and you can change the life of another by a look and by a smile. And we need more of that. We need more of this deep sense of connection to self, and therefore the connection to others, therefore the connection to nature, and this deep compassion for the suffering of others and the self and the nature. And I feel like once you get to a point where you start making your internal shifts, a lot of natural things spiral out from there. A lot of positive shifts and changes continue from there. And without that, it's, it can be really hard.
Tough. And that leads me to, I ask everybody that I have on this podcast this question because I think it's helpful to your point and actually what you're speaking to help people understand to find their North Star. So describe your spiritual North Star that guides you whenever you feel lost or uncertain.
Gosh, my spiritual North Star. Lately, what's been my spiritual North Star is something called transfiguration. And transfiguration is a shamanic method, and so where you become one with the universe, and you basically envision the universe inside of you, and you energetically shift your auric field out in all directions to connect to the infinite universe, while at the same time bringing in divine light. And with that, I feel like my guidance, my connection to everything, my understanding of everything is very clear. I don't feel confused. And so that helps me to get out of my head and get out of that confused state or that uncertain state. And that becomes my North Star. And that keeps my power within me. I'm not giving it to somebody else to tell me what to do. I'm not looking outside for guidance. And I'm gaining my internal trust because my intuition feels heightened, and my senses feel more connected. And with that, I'm in my power. And Sandra Ingerman is the one who I learned this method from. And she talks about how she's the shamanic practitioner that I'm obsessed with. And she says that she doesn't even offer solar and power retrievals anymore. She only transfigures and then sees the client in a transfigured state. And so now my ultimate goal is to deeply embody this transfiguration process and to assist in the shifts with everyone I come in contact with simply by embodying this expanded light. And that's been my North Star. Yeah.
It's a pretty good North Star, my friend.
I mean, it helps. We all need something, right?
Yeah, we do. So how can people who want to work with you find you?
So I have a website. It's my name, HayleeLacroix.com, HayleeLacroix.com, like the water, LaCroix, like the water. And my Instagram, Haylee.Lacroix. And those are the best two forms to find me. And then if an email is connect@HayleeLacroix.com.
Okay. And I'll have all this listed if you're on YouTube, the description box, or if you're on the podcast, it'll be in the episode description to let you guys know so you can connect to Haylee. Thank you, my friend, for coming on here. I appreciate you so much, and I enjoy you always, and I will vow for Haylee. She is an amazing, amazing practitioner.
Thank you, Beckett. And I feel all the same ways about you, and it was such a pleasure to be on this podcast.
I appreciate it. So everybody, stay curious, stay empowered, and keep shining your unique light. Until next time.